With the conformity of our colleague from Cavite, I would actually have less questions, but more of I'd like to spread into the record the experience of the Guimaras oil spill of 2006, as I was the chairman of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources during that time. Thank you. Let the record show that the gentleman smiled and nodded at me. So I will proceed.
We all learn from the experience of the gentle lady from Taguig.
Thank you, Your Honors. So, Mr. President, as I said, no, this experience we had in 2006, precisely at the time that it happened, obviously were not able to prevent it as it happened again, but I think it is very important for us to see what lessons, what observations we had then and what lessons can be learned. And I was enlightened by the questions of our Senate President Pro Temp that precisely was intended to figure out or to establish what we're doing now. And for me, having been through this same process, having had to investigate as to what happened, what was going on, what interventions were being made, I'd like to share what we learned then and hope that we're moving fast enough to make use of those experiences. So, Your Honors, to put it simply, and I actually asked for photos to be shown, we actually went to the site. I wanted to see for myself what it looked like. And from there, dun po natin nakita na, actually it looks like putik. Ganun kakapal yung oil na humalo na dun sa soil and dun sa debris or whatever is naturally found in the waters. And as you can see there, that's literally oil being poured into a PET bottle.
Mr. President,
yes.
this looks like this is not a vintage photo. Perhaps this was taken last week or?
2006, naks
Okay.
naman na.
I thought that was taken last week.
May ganon. Sige, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for your kind implications. Yeah, so I was saying, let's focus on the PET bottle and look at that. That's literally oil being poured. At yan yung ano ba tawag doon? Yung na ganon?
Nasalok.
Oo, nasalok dun sa using lang their bare hands. So, ganun kakapal yon, Your Honors. And after our ocular and then hearings, the outcome was actually the Oil Pollution Compensation Act of 2007. Take note, the Senate acted with urgency. In less than a year, we had a law addressing this. And for reference, Your Honors, yun nga, after the visit and the hearings, it was reported, and I'm really just honestly, the online reporting is a really good aid to my memory because I had to ask my longtime staff to refresh my memory on what were the steps that happened here. August 27, 2006 was when we had the joint probe with the House. My co-chair here was Chairman Congressman Neric Acosta. So it was a joint probe, Your Honor. And then by June 4, 2007, the following year, we already had our bill and we went through the process and we passed it. Interestingly, this law was questioned by the ship owners. By the ship owners, kasi nga po, it's an Oil Pollution Compensation Act. But the Supreme Court ruled with finality in 2018, and let me just read it into the record. This is a summary, no? This case concerns the constitutionality of establishing the Oil Pollution Management Fund under Section 22A of Republic Act number 9483 and Section 1 rule of its implementing rules and regulations by imposing 10 centavos per liter for every delivery or transshipment of oil made by tanker barges and tanker haulers. quoting from the ruling, the constitutionality and validity of subparagraph A, Section 22 of RA 9483, as well as Section 1 rule of the implementing rules and regulation of said law are hereby upheld. So upheld yan, and precisely the objective here, Your Honor, is that we have a fund to tackle oil spills. So we need to look into those funds to ensure that those funds are intact, and that we now have something to help us when we have another occurrence of such oil spill. So that's one thing that I'd like to be able to determine moving forward. And then I recall, no, that there was a question asked by our Senate President Pro Temp on who's assisting and all that. And again, during that time, various international nonprofit organizations, government agencies, and academic institutions collaborated in responding to the crisis. These agencies included the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, the International Maritime Organization, IMO, Greenpeace, Worldwide Fund for Nature, our NDRRMC, DNR, the Philippines Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, and the University of the Philippines, Visayas, among others. And this same article says that 13 years later, so this was written in 2019, kasi 2006 plus 13 is 2019. 13 years later, Guimaras once again boasts pristine beaches with white sand. TINMR is crowned as the jewel of Guimaras, and the fisherfolk have returned to harvesting the abundance of waters. My question, though, and I'm not sure if the summary of my staff is just incomplete or it's not there, how long did it take? Kasi that was one of the questions asked by the Senate President Pro Temp. No? How long did it take? This article simply says 13 years later, it is now back to pristine beaches. But did it take 12 and a half years, 13 years? I hope not. No? And then with respect to the response on the health side, I'm just referring to the health side, it would be interesting for our colleagues to know that under the CDC bill that I have sponsored already, it is defined, the public health event is defined as either a public health emergency or a public health threat due to biological, chemical, radionuclear, or environmental agents. Therefore, the CDC would be tasked to respond. And the CDC would have regional offices, so that would hopefully make the response quicker. But for now, until that it is established, it's just generally DOH if we're referring to the health and well-being of the residents or those, especially the fishermen in the area. And I think I've covered the bulk of my update, or at least my throwback in history, and hopefully the lessons learned will benefit us. Mr. Sponsor, I read that for your information as well.
Thank you.
Don't throw back the questions to me because I may not have answers.
I'll just ask. I'll just add one item. Perhaps at this stage we can include one other government agency which we have funded sufficiently, and that's the Philippine Space Agency. They can help us. They're supposed to have satellites.
Yes,
they can focus
I was about to say.
They were
Yes.
bragging that they can focus their satellites over and above Ukraine. Perhaps they can focus
Yes, Your Honor.
their satellites now over and above at that strait between Mindoro, Romblon, and Verde Island. So tingnan po natin kung may magagawa tong Philippine Space Agency.
Totoo po yun. I agree with His Honor, Mr. President. And finally, for the record, I'd like to end by saying that although I no longer am the chairman of the same committee on environment and natural resources, I have deep interests and concerns and in my official capacity as chairman of the Committee on SDGs, Innovation and Futures Thinking. Yung pagbanggit nga nitong agency, that's part of futures thinking. No? Pinopondohan natin sila what can they do using innovation and technology to support us. And this covers SDG 6, which is clean water and sanitation, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, and SDG 14, life below waters. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President, to our colleague from Cavite.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for showing us a recent picture.
Thank you, Senator Pia Cayetano. Majority Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just to add to our distinguished colleague,